Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome to the Paranormal Experience Radio Show with your host, Kat Hobson. We are here to learn all we can about every type of experience within the paranormal. There will be interviews with seasoned investigators of the spiritual realm, including ufologists, cryptozoologists, psychics, mediums, authors, and creators of technology, and others with credible knowledge to share. Together, we will find out what brought these investigators of the unknown into the field and learn what keeps them working so hard in it. I'm interested in learning how these individuals go about their work, and I believe you are too. This program is all about bringing those who are in the field together with our listeners who are interested in what they find. For us, the paranormal is all about working with and supporting each other. We're all here seeking answers to the questions that bother us so. Now, let's get those answers. And enjoy the show.
Good evening. Welcome to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to Paranormal Experience Radio. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so glad you're here. We are going to have just a fantastic time tonight. It's one of those shows where you're interviewing a friend. It makes life more interesting because sometimes you just never know what's going to happen. So, Chris is usually fairly well behaved. I very rarely am, so we will see what happens. So, I'm just kidding. Chris DiCesare is someone that I really admire a lot. He is kind of like accidentally a paranormal person he didn't choose to be. When he started school, he moved into his dorm, the C2D1 of Erie Hall at SUNY Geneseo. It was great at first, and then things happened. And when things started happening, they just kept getting more and more exciting. And I am so looking forward because he has a television project coming out that's going to be part of a series. And I can't wait to see that because this is somebody that I admire and respect. He is kind. He is loving. He's one of the absolute good guys. And Chris, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Well, just thrilled to have you. You know, I absolutely respect you more than the average bear. I really do. You're a fabulous husband. You know, you posted pictures of you and your bride, and it was on your wedding day, and you still look at her like that.
Yeah. That's the hope. I mean, falling in love is a challenge. You might work out, it might not work out, but the hope is that it does, and the hope is that you're in for the long haul, and that the vows you share in front of your family at that altar, are ones you honor over time. And I am very proud. It's been, over 30 years now, so I'm very much in love with her, and I'm very proud of her. And she's been a great friend, a great wife, and a great mom to my kids, now a great grandma. So I'm very proud of that, and I figure why not share some positivity.
Well, I think it's cool that you do, because I'm very fortunate in my marriage also. It took us 2 times, but we got there, right? So it's just really a beautiful thing, because you grew up with that kind of love in your family. So
Right, I was very fortunate.
So your role models were 100% there. And I
Yeah,
think that's one of the reasons you're the kind of dad you are too.
yeah, I got lucky. I got lucky, Cat, where I had, I was born with the family with 2 parents, and 2 parents who stayed together and loved each other, and 2 parents who raised their children with the concept that what you need will give you, and what you want you earn. And I know it was like that as a kid. I didn't understand that at first, but getting older, I realized that they wanted to make sure we're safe and healthy. At the same time, we could survive on our own if we had to someday, and that's the balance that you walk. So yeah, and everyone has that opportunity to have parents like that or a family life like that. So it gave me a leg up. It really did. In the end, though, you're dealt a hand of cards. When you once you out of the birth canal, that's it. Nothing's fair, and you have to make the most of the cards you're dealt. And those people who are dealt poor hands and play them well, those are our heroes.
I think so. It's, you have to accept the circumstances that you get, and then it's up to you to make the best of them. And
absolutely,
I didn't have parents like that, but I had grandparents like that. So that helped tremendously. And I had an aunt and uncle also who had that kind of respect and consideration for each other until their later years, when it didn't seem to be working that way anymore. So it's weird when your heroes have feet of clay and you just absolutely love them to death, but you're just kind of like, really? That's what you thought would be a good idea?
Yeah,
it is what it is.
We're human, and sometimes I, as a kid, I'd watch my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, and I'd watch and I'd listen. And sometimes, in a relationship, there's bound to be arguments because different people. But the hope is that when the argument is done, there's some compromise or understanding, and you move forward. And I was very fortunate. Like I said, I'm looking back at my childhood. I don't think that I can't remember maybe one divorce out of 30 couples growing up. People stuck together and made it work. And I don't remember, I remember good weekends and gatherings on Sundays, and everybody had their pasta and they brought their kids and their nephews. And so again, it was a very nice thing. And I didn't realize necessarily that was perhaps unusual or special, because it's all I knew. And later on, as I get into my life, I realized that there are folks who are alone. There are people who are in foster care. There are folks who are in bad relationships where there's domestic violence and or infidelity and things. And looking back now, I realized how lucky I was. But, there's a pro and con to that, because as good as it was for me to be in that sheltered, wonderful, loving place, when something terrifying happens or illegal happens or dangerous, you're not always prepared for that to happen, as if you had a tougher life growing up where you are a little more streetwise, about more coping skills and how to toughen your outer shell, So there's a pro and con to both, but I'm very thankful for the life that I had.
I think that you're absolutely right. I'm thankful that you had that too, because it made you the man that you are. But I think you would have been pretty amazing.
Well, I guess we'll never know, but I'd like to think so.
And that's okay too. But, I know when you went to SUNY Geneseo, which is State University of New York, Geneseo campus, but you were absolutely a brilliant runner, and you did all of the cool things too. Did you?
You know what's funny about that? If I can just interject one thing, I didn't recognize what I was doing back then. To run a mile in 4 and change, to run marathons, 26 miles when you're 14 years old. I just did those things. I had no conception of where it fell in the scope of things. So now I look back and I'm thinking, how did I do that? I ran a half marathon in under an hour and 20 minutes. Now it takes that long to take the mailbox and back, which is right across the lawn. So I don't always know, but it's interesting that you say that with the track. I was just reading on the internet about the new show, and what it says is here is the first episode covers a college track star. I'm like, who's that? That was me. I'm like, what? So I don't. Now I'm so old I don't think about that anymore. I'm the guy in the rocking chair. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yes.
Well, I tell you, I was always impressed ever since I've known you and did my background research on you, because you really were a track star. Right. And it was the joy. I mean, you did it with your dad. You had a lot of just sheer happiness doing that, which is probably why you didn't realize what it was.
Yeah, it's more spiritual, I think, sometimes. Don't get me wrong, there are hard workouts where your muscles hurt, where you're sweating, where you grind things out to improve your speed or increase your endurance, or some tough runs. But for the most part, it was fun. I remember in the summertime, it gets pretty hot there, so I'd like jump in a cold shower first, or jump in a pool, and then go run while I'm soaking wet still, and I'd dry off over time and in the sun and feel warm. I love there, and I'd look at the birds and the trees and the green leaves and the blue sky, and I'd run past fields, I'd run past houses, just run. And I remember looking at my legs there; it was effortless. It was so amazing to move. And again, I was so focused on improving and getting faster and faster, I didn't necessarily realize that it was a gift that wouldn't last forever. And you mentioned it before about my life and my marriage. It's been 30 years. I mean, everything is temporal. I mean, eventually with that relationship, one of us will go. That's how we'll wake up one day and someone's not going to be there. And I think it's so important for all of us in our lives to realize when you have something, appreciate it. And one of the things I tell people when I give my lectures is taste your food, listen to music, talk to people, because it goes so fast and we all feel this thing eventually of loss. So rather than just deal with this thing of the loss, before that happens, embrace what is. And I think that's a very important thing.
I agree. And I have, I got kind of slowed down this year a little bit. And one of the things that I learned when I was less mobile than I would have liked to be was, you've got all this time. Read stuff, write stuff, listen to stuff, things that you wouldn't be doing otherwise. And now I have a whole different perspective on what matters.
Right.
And, it's really weird because I'm probably the most laid back and chill person I've ever been in my life. Because I got used to, I can't change this, I might as well cope. So in that instance, it was a true gift. It really was. And it takes a while when you can't do what you want to be able to accomplish that.
Right.
So, and I am going to let people know we have a listener who is having a hard time in our chat room with our sound. Everything shows that it's running very well, and I'm not sure what the issue is. If you are having a hard time listening in the chat room, you can go to Spreaker.com and you should be able to find us. Just search WBHM-DB or -DB, and you'll find the show, Paranormal Experienced. So let's see if that'll help. And I'm not sure if you have to sign up or log in, but it should be okay. And I'm getting that we're clear, so maybe there's just a glitch with the sending it over there. I have no idea. But I really want you to be able to listen now. So, Barry, if you go to the index page of the WBHM-DB.com, you can hit listen now. I don't know if you did that when you did your refresh, but I'm sorry, but let's get you in here. So, I'm sorry it's an issue. So, Chris, when you went to college, that was a big deal. I mean, it's fun.
Yes.
You're making new friends. You're meeting all these professors. You have all these opportunities for learning. And hopefully, if you're like me, when I went to school, those were, the learning was not my main priority. But I was a young freshman.
Right. I hear you. My father was a high school principal, and so it was ingrained in us, my siblings and I, that A's were acceptable, D's and below were not. And so I was raised in a way to be, I guess you'd call it like an athlete scholar. And so my first semester at college, I think I had like a 3.9 or something like that. I just probably had lamp burn from all the work that I did. And I was exact opposite. I realized over time that, I could do a 3.8 or 3.7 or 3.6 and maybe have some friends, have a social life, do those things. So I was just very worried. I had never been out in that way in the real world, in a sense, without my parents' guidance, without my family supporting me. And I was just, for the first time, hours and hours and hours from home, with no vehicle and no cell phones back then. And there I was. So I was very cautious when I first got to college to maintain my normal schedule. I wrote everything down on a piece of paper, and I did the same thing I did when I was at home. And then as I realized I could do this and take care of myself and be independent, I then gradually lessen the restrictions on myself, which allowed me to enjoy the things around me a little more.
What was your favorite part before you started having the different part?
I think the music. My parents liked music in the 50s, the doo-wop stuff in the 60s, and we listened to easy listening radio records on, in the car and the AM/FM radios. But, we didn't have MTV growing up as a kid, and I got to music, and I saw these music video shows on TV, like VH1 or Friday Night Videos. I went to some parties where they were playing music, and I learned about all different rock bands and electronic bands and punk bands and folks from across the pond, as they say, from Europe. So I love the Eurythmics and Peter Gabriel and just hearing all these new sounds, and like the British Europop, modern English. And I really liked that. And I liked that I could go to a place and just sit someplace and hear the music, see people dance and smile and hopefully not argue, but hopefully fall in love or have a nice time. I thought it was a cool part. And I was exposed to new art and new clothes styles and new hairstyles and new ways of thinking. So just the exposure. And again, I was big about control, stay within yourself, take care of yourself, be safe, control your environment. But at the same time, I was learning to see there are other ways out there. There are other thoughts out there, other visual stimulus out there that I hadn't experienced before. So it's kind of like a sandbox or going to the beach. You're exploring for the first time. And I really enjoyed that. And I went on hikes with my friends sometimes. And with the track and cross-country teams, you traveled across the state. And I saw different towns and architecture, with different people, different type of landforms. I took college courses and learned about different ethnicity groups and social groups and anthropology. I learned about literature and fiction. And it was a great time just to be alive. And I felt like a sponge of just watching and learning all these things from a very comfortable base, And I remember very strongly about 1984, about the unification we had. We had the Olympic Games were held in Los Angeles. And I remember that year, Ronald Reagan won 49 states. I mean, unlike today where you have the red and the blue, and it's a battle for like 20 electoral votes because we're so split in half as a nation. I mean, imagine winning 49 states. He lost only Minnesota to his rival, who came from there, by a percentage point. It shows you how cohesive we were. We were a unit. We thought in a way, and there's a patriotism going around. I love that time,
Yes.
And maybe because I was young, maybe because I was a teenager, maybe because I was healthy, that helped. But I really recall that as a good time to be around,
Well, I tell you, I was so overwhelmed by that my orientation day, I joined the Young Republicans. I will never forget that.
Got it.
It was definitely a different time. And I agree. I like that unification too, because I would love for my children to experience that. But we are up, believe it or not, to our break, just about it, our first break. But we are going to take this, and we will be right back. And we have sound functioning on both sites, and we have chats functioning on both sites. So feel free to hop in, www.wbhm-db.com. If you're on Spreaker, just search for us. We are WBHM-DB, and you'll find us under Paranormal Experience there. We'll be right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. You are listening to Paranormal Experience Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. And I am so glad you are, because we've got the best guest. His name is Christopher DiCesare. He is a complete great guy. He survived a very extreme haunting at a very young age. And the people working with him and helping him were also very young. So it's pretty cool. The whole experience was pretty cool. But we have a question for you in chat, if you don't mind, before we get started. Well, Sherry wants to know who your favorite person you've met at events, other than me, of course, she says, and you were really excited to meet and talk to, and that you respect.
Wow, that's a great question, and it's challenging because I've done probably 140 events in the past 4 years and met thousands of people. Some who are coming from their homes to say hello and share their stories. Others who've been on TV shows and movies and who I looked up to. And I would have to say the most memorable moment for me was somebody who isn't quite a celebrity, but they're very important. Ed and Lorraine Warren were demonologists who kind of set the stage for most of us back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I got to see them speak when I was at college. And some interesting things happened, which you know about, Kat, with my reaction to that. It was actually not the stage. But in any event,
Yes.
About 3.5, 4 years ago, I got to speak with Judy Spira, who is Lorraine Ed's daughter. I was at an event they were at, and she came up to me and said, "Oh, you're Chris, right? You're the Ghost Boy." I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "My mom loved you." I'm like, "What?" Because the experience that I had was something embarrassing. I was confused by it, and for about 30 years, I was kind of unnerved that she wouldn't shake my hand, that she, just kind of gave me a bit of a cold shoulder, and it always bothered me, but I didn't want to pursue that. And she mentioned to me that her mom spoke at that moment, and she said that her mom would read people, their auras and such. That's part of her presentation, part of what she did as her presentation. And she said that, no, my mom was not annoyed by you. It's just, you said your aura was so strong, it was so overpowering that she didn't want you to read her. You can do what she would normally do and glean things. And so that you away from her because she couldn't focus, and that she thought, I was very highly of me as a nice person and things like that. So meeting her was nice because it closed a 30-year wound in my psyche, and to know that it wasn't a negative thing, it's actually just a positive thing, and that she had positive feelings for me. And then I reached out a little bit, and we had some communications that way, and so that closed the circle in a very nice way for me. So I really appreciated that. So that's one thing that I can say about meeting. I met Judy Spirit. Again, she talks a little bit. Her husband pointed most of the presentations with Annabelle Doll and things like that. But meeting her was really an honor. And then I'd have to say probably a person I never knew who they were. I often speak about overcoming trauma. I speak about reaching out to people in times of need and trying to escape things like depression. And I came back to my my table at the New Jersey Unity Festival, the conference, about 3 years ago in New Jersey. And on my table was this note. It was pulled out of a notebook. And it just read, "Thank you for your courage and for showing the world your perseverance. I'm going through a somewhat similar situation, though after 10 years I'm coming to understand that it's psychic in nature. But the parallels are definitely there, and seeing you surviving, moving on, and living, it reminds me that I have the strength to get through my own stuff. God bless, and this will be." So I never knew who that person was. I might never know who they were, but I was so proud to know that what I had spoken about that day had left a positive impact on them to keep moving forward. So he probably wanted to hear that the question who I met was like a famous person. But for me, the closing of a circle of confusion for 30 years, and then the positivity of some unknown person thanking me on their own journey for recovery and hope, those are two of the things I think that stick out most in my mind.
How cool is that?
No, it's very cool. You know this too, Kat, because as a radio personality, and you also do some shows and events, you meet a lot of people, and most of them are very nice, but very few of them actually will tell you their inner workings of their mind because of enough time that people are around. And so when you can get a person who is truly impacted in a positive way by what you're doing, it means the world, because it's not about notoriety. It's not about finances. It's not about popularity. It's about doing something nice for somebody. And that to me gives me like a bounce in my steps when I know I've done something good. My great grandmother, when I was 4 years old, took me back in her little rose garden, and she lived in the city of Newburgh, which is kind of like a small Detroit in terms of its crime level and things like that. And remember, there were tires back there, discarded tires, and broken window panes and old bricks in the back. But in her little spot, the little rose garden, and she took me out there, held my hand. I was 4. It's one of my first memories. She said, "Look at the flowers. I looked at the flowers, touch the flower petals, water the flowers." I helped to water the flowers. She told me that children are like flowers. If you give them food, you hug them, you're nice and talk to them, they grow big and strong. And after my experience at Geneseo, some 16 years later, I went back to visit her shortly before she passed. And there she was by the garden, and I was mowing her lawn for her. And she came out of the back door, and she stopped me, put her hands on my cheeks, and said, "Honey, what did I tell you when you were small?" And I thought for a moment, it had been 16 years. You told me that flowers are like people, and if you take care of them and you feed them, you hug them, you're nice to them, they grow big and strong. She gave me a kiss on the lips. And then she said, "Good boy, honey." And she walked back and they make her homemade meatball soup. And then she was gone not long after that. Her garden's gone now. She's gone. It's been probably, close to 30 years now. But not her message. And what she told me, what she left instilled in me was just a beautiful thing. And I carry that with me as a badge of honor that she imparted a wisdom to me at a young age. Believe that I'd know it and realize it, and I did. So I'm very thankful for her leadership. And my latest book I dedicate to her. So.
Well, I need that latest book. But that's one of the things that just wows me about you, is because you
I can
did
type,
retain.
right?
Huh?
That I can type?
That you can type. Definitely that you
Yes.
can type. But seriously, that you listened. I mean, because that was pretty amazing that you still listened and you took that from that moment, and that when she asked you about it, you retained it. You were able to do the recall, and everything was grooving. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And again, that's why you were the kind of dad you were.
Well, I think every person has strengths and skills. We talk about sometimes hardships, but all of us also have qualities that are unique to ourselves that are very good. Some folks can sing like an angel, Some people can write as though they're like a famous author. Some people can dance well. Some people have a beautiful laugh where they laugh, you laugh. I think we all have certain gifts, whether we talk about them or not, that are beautiful about ourselves. And I think that one of the gifts that I either developed on my own or was blessed to have through DNA was that I always seemed to have a sense for what was important. I tended to, like, in school, I would go in class in high school and I'd hear the right words and just know them for the test. I just had that ability to do that, and I think that, I don't know what causes that or how it happens, but I tend to sense like these moments that are important, like these junctures, and I'm very thankful for that too. And sometimes you have to ask, what's the balance between free will and fate? Sometimes things we say, it's meant to happen. It's meant to be. Look at the signs. That's God's will. That's what was intended. That's love at first sight. So there are things where you say, you know what? That's of course that would happen. And there are other times you think, what on earth just happened here? Why is this occurring? This is pure chaos. It's madness. And I wonder sometimes what the balance is between free will versus fate, what's preordained, and where in life we fit. Because as I get older, I look and there's so many things I say, of course, that's obvious it would happen that way. It seems meant to be in that way. And there are times I think, pick the newspaper up or look at the internet and think, what on earth? And I get confused by that. So I wonder sometimes.
Well, it does give you pause. I mean, right. It really does. So we have a situation here in Alabama where there is a child missing.
Right.
And everyone is trying to find this child. It is publicized, it is discussed, and you think of that mother and it's almost like a there but for the grace of God goes anybody.
Right.
And so, there are things that just tear you up that you can't fix, but that you sure do pray hard about them. And
you
expect a divine intervention.
Is she still missing?
She is still missing.
I want to, if I can say something about something like that affected me growing up. When I was 16 years old, I ran for the high school track team, as you probably would imagine. And one of the runners on our track team, her name was Paula. And Paula was, she was outgoing, she was fun, she was comedic, she had like a spark of life to her, and on the winter track practice, getting on the sports bus to go home, it's cold, it's dark by then, on a Friday, she asked me if I wanted to go on a date with her. And two things happened in my mind. The first is that she had a boyfriend, so that didn't seem appropriate to me, but not that you're like hooked up with it at that point in time. And also, I was trying to focus honestly on my studies and my running and things like that. I don't want to have distraction of having a relationship at that age. But she got to be sure of my age. Anyway, she got angry. I wouldn't go out with her. And she said to me, as she got off the bus, you should have said yes, Chris. You should have said yes. You made a big mistake. And she got the sports bus. The following Monday, I got called down to the principal's office, and there are a bunch of gentlemen there with these fancy suits. And they're investigators. Over that weekend, I guess that right after she got off the sports bus, she hitchhiked home. And she's picked up by somebody. She was raped, strangled, and killed and left for dead not too far from her house. And I was one of the last people to see her alive, and they wanted to know what I knew about her and what kind of mood she was in and things. And it was horrifying that a 16-year-old girl would be killed in a small community. And so for a long time, there's uncertainty with the young girl in Alabama. For a long time, people didn't know where the killer was. Was it someone she knew? Was it a neighbor? Was it her family? Was it someone from school? And it was sad how that happened, that we all became suspicious, looking for clues around us. Who's the killer? It could be anybody. And it really cast like a heavy shadow over the area of Montgomery and Newburgh and Walden, New York for a while, that, this girl had been killed. And I remember she had given me a class picture, like high school pictures at one point in time. So when I went to college, 2 years later, still unsolved mystery what happened to her, I put a picture of her in a little frame behind my godchild. I picture of my godchild being baptized, and then behind that, I just put the picture of Paula. I don't want to forget about her. I felt bad that she was taken so soon. During the haunting, one of the things that scared me the most was that in the morning I woke up and the picture frame was torn apart on my desk, and right in the middle of the desk was her picture sitting there. I'm like, this thing knows, this ghost, this spirit knows about this girl. This is scary. Well, they didn't find her killer. They didn't find her killer for years later. In fact, what happened was this gentleman, if I can use that word loosely, he killed apparently 8 girls from Connecticut all the way through Pennsylvania on the way going to college out toward Colorado. He eventually settled there. He stopped killing for like 15, 20 years. He became a Boy Scout troop leader. He was deacon at his church. He got married, raised 2 kids. And then one day, the urge to kill happened again. And they ended up matching his DNA to Paula and a bunch of other young ladies, and he was the last person to be executed in Connecticut, the death penalty, because of what he did. And that was around the year 2001 or 2. And so it took 21 years to bring that person to justice. And all the while, her parents, her siblings, her best friends had to sit and wonder what happened to her. And that's rough. That's a rough thing. So my heart goes out to this young girl and her family. And you always have to prepare for the worst so you can survive that day, but you always hope for the best. And so here's hoping for the best for her.
Hoping so too. She's a 3-year-old, and she's adorable. And it was a couple that took her. So hopefully they took her because they wanted her. And they're taking care of her until she can be found. And that's my prayer.
That's a good thing if that was the case, yes.
Yeah. And so if you're my friend on Facebook, I have her picture and stuff. If you're in the area, then please check that out. And so I'm going to move on from that because that's pretty rough. And I'm sorry about Paula.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and you hope that you find some peace, and you hope that the killer being caught, and you hope that the knowledge that no one else will be hurt by this person will bring people some peace of mind, knowing it wasn't like the family who got her or her friends, or just some person running through the area. So
yes, well, especially her friends or other family. I mean, the suspicion had to be horrid.
Well, yes, she was found not far from her home, so the fingers get pointed at the family as well, which is that's the worst, because you're going through this grieving process, still not understanding if it really happened or how it happened, thinking about this young child being a baby and 6 months old and their first steps, and then you're faced with the concept that they're gone, they're just gone, and you don't know what their last thoughts were and what they're thinking and how you can save them, and then all of a sudden people start suspecting you. I can't imagine that, and I hope no one has to go through that again the way that happened with her family.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned when the ghost took apart your frame, right, and placed her picture there. How long had you been at Geneseo before this activity began? I mean, you were just living day-to-day campus life.
Yeah, some people, when they retell my experience, will create it as though I got to college fresh out of high school, and within days this thing happened. I wasn't prepared. It didn't happen that way at all. In fact, I was there a year, my freshman year before it happened, living in Genesee Hall, with no occurrences, no negativity. My second year of college, I moved to Erie Hall with my friend Paul, and that's where the events happened. That's where I met John Jeff Unger and Linda Fox and Beth Kinsman and the whole group there. And that was a great fall semester we talked about before, with the Olympics that just happened and the election. And it wasn't until Ed and Lorraine Warren showed up at the town in January of '85, actually, that I started to be aware that there might be things out there, or the idea of EVPs or ghosts. And then 11 days later, the haunting began in earnest on February 11th in my dorm room, C2D1, and that's why the haunting's called that, because it was the C building, second floor, D quad, first room in it. And we just say that because instead of saying the word ghost, which people said, what, ghost? Gets much attention, we just say, how are things in C2D1? This way we kept things, under the table, basically, so no one could talk about them because we weren't prepared to talk about those things. And I heard voices. I began to hear this person call my name again and again, Chris, over and over, and I was nervous about that. And then my roommate heard the same thing independently, and then the following day, I saw this full-body apparition, like what they call it nowadays. I just saw like a big, full-body ghost in my room, looking at me with the tilted neck, and I screamed. I threw my candy in the air. I was eating hot tamale candies, and I ran in the hallway, pounded on doors saying, help, oh my God, I'm going to help me, I'm going to die, and I began to confide in my friends, Jeff and Ed, but what I just seen. And thankfully, Jeff took an interest in my well-being, an interest in what the paranormal was, and an interest in trying to secure a safe place for us all to live, and he began to basically investigate this while being in support as my friend. And, a lot of people talk about, like, early people, early trailblazers, evidence gathering and things like that. Well, my friend Jeff, back in the early 80s, was doing just that, getting written documentation, eyewitness accounts, taking photographs, doing voice recordings, doing temperature readings. So he didn't do that for fame, for Facebook notification. He didn't do it to get on TV. He didn't help a friend out who thought maybe he's going crazy, and that was me.
Well, he actually was astounding.
Yes.
And something that I didn't ask him when I had the chance, I didn't ask Maura when I had the chance, I'm going to ask you because you're here. But did he have any past history of dealing with anything of this nature?
I remember when the haunting began that Jeff was well-versed in what I considered paranormal concepts. He had heard of famous hauntings. He had he would describe it as an armchair interest in these things. He watched shows like In Search Of, and that's incredible. And I think that as a youngster, I didn't know him until we were 18 years old, but I think as a youngster, he wanted to see what was out there. And I recall him telling me a story about how we'd go outside and take a flashlight and try to signal for mothership is anybody out there, and it doesn't light. He'd look in the woods for something and maybe out there, some cryptid or something like that. He'd wonder about life's mysteries, and were there real things out there? Was just like the Easter Bunny, And I think that by the time he became a teenager, went to college, he began to have the idea that, well, these things might be fairy tales. They might just be fanciful, imaginations of people, just to make time pass by or to create literature or art. And when I came running into the room and we began to talk, I think at that point in time, he had an opportunity to decide whether or not he would put stock in my statement that I saw a ghost and allow himself to be that dreamer again, that young kid to say, oh my gosh, do I dare challenge myself to look for these things? Or if he would just say, listen, I'm sorry right now, I can't deal with you, get some help and get in my room, which he could have done easily, and that would have made sense. He decided to assist me in this endeavor. And one of the things that I struggled with silently, not to him, but in myself, was I had to wonder sometimes how much, we're teenagers, of his interest in this haunting was due to his wanting to help me versus getting information to share or to know or understand. And I grew up in a very competitive environment with athletics. In athletics, you're always trying to look for the leg up. What's the short in the course, the race course? What's the best way to prepare for a marathon? What's the best? You're always looking for an advantage over your opponents. Jeff had this unique ability to appreciate the achievements of others. He was not competitive in a way that would be bad for a friendship. In fact, he saw somebody achieve something great in some area, and he wanted to emulate that or admire that. So, But I remember I knew he was a true friend, like a brother. After I had been scratched up in the shower, and my back was bleeding, these lines on my back, and he wanted to get a picture of the natural light that faded away. And I asked him not to do that. I said, if you're my friend, you wouldn't take that picture because I don't want a memory, a trophy of what happened to me. I want it to go away. And he put the camera down. And I knew at that moment for sure that this was a person who, while he had an interest in these things, and it was fascinating with the EVPs and the photographs. I mean, it was fascinating, as terrifying as it was fascinating to be there. His primary concern was keeping his friends safe, which is so altruistic. It's so kind. It's so mature, you know. And whenever I speak, I make people understand what a good person he was and / is. And I owe a lot to him, you know.
I'm going to have to stop you because we're late for our break. But I wasn't going to interrupt that because it's my opinion of him too. So we will be right back. And we have so many questions. We will get right back to them when we come.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Board and the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantium. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Board and the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I'm joined tonight by my guest, Chris DiCesare, who is really a strong person. He went through a very extreme haunting at a very young age after he had gone to school and was living in a dorm. So, didn't have the normal support system there, and people came together to support him through this, and basically you had a bunch of young people taking care of their own, and I think that's a good thing. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you.
And we do have several questions in chat, and one of them I think is terrific. And by the way, this is from Jordan Jones, who we met in Gettysburg.
Oh, he's a great gentleman, great person. He's so positive. He's always trying to learn, and he's very respectful. I love Jordan. Great guy. Hello, Jordan.
And his question for you is, what do you believe drew the spirit to you at Geneseo, and what activity, if any, have you experienced since this haunt?
Well, I can tell you that at that time, when the haunting was actually going on in full tilt, I didn't want to know why it was there. I wanted to know how to get rid of it. And that's the truth. I didn't go into this experience expecting it, looking for it, or being able to deal with it. However, people around me asked that question. So folks like Paul or Jeff or Ed or Beth or Linda or Judy and Craig, they would speculate and wonder why this is happening. And one of the questions that came up was, why am I being targeted? Why is everyone hearing this ghost call only my name? Some folks believe that the room that Jeff and I were in, originally it was Paul and I, but then Jeff moved in when Paul fled, was maybe somebody had killed themselves in that room, and I walked into a bad place though, at the most perfect storm moment, and being somewhat sensitive, and that began that process. Other people thought that maybe I just had this this understanding, the sensitivity that ghosts were drawn to me no matter what I did. So maybe I'm running past some cemetery or something like that, and it latched onto me and attached and came home. Others thought there must be something in my family. generations back that had occurred that led this thing to me. And so we really didn't know for the longest time what exactly was going on. All these theories are swirling about, and I couldn't lend credence to any of them because I didn't know anything about what was going on. Most people today, when they investigate, they have a working knowledge of what a K2 meter is or what a spirit might be, and they've seen TV shows, they read books, they've had their own experiences. I had nothing like this to go on, so I was basically running blind. It'd be like finding yourself in Paris, not speaking French with no map, no GPS. Like, now what do I do? And so it was a little daunting. Years later, we began to figure out what might have happened. And one of the clues is that when I talked to this spirit the very last time in April, I wanted to end this haunting, and I finally had the courage to break or go against the priest's blessing. And Father Charlie Manning was a great help to me. He restored my faith. He came to the room. He did a blessing, trying to help both myself and the spirit. And I remember it was a beautiful ceremony. It wasn't like on TV with green glop and fire and hoofs and things. It was just a beautiful ceremony. And then I asked him, "Can the spirit get back in?" And he said, "Only if we invite it back in." And I swore I wouldn't do that. So here I am, of course, a month and a half later, inviting it back in because I felt I couldn't ask the priest to bless 25 rooms. It's just not functional. So, and people were being hurt around me and held down and beat up and things. So I decided I would call back to me where it first started with haunting and just try to deal with it best I could. And
so
during that conversation,
let me ask you.
Yeah,
that was while your room was blessed and basically sealed off from the spirit. It
correct.
went other
and
places.
I broke that. I took a risk of getting rid of my safe space in order to deal with this, hopefully one final time, because people kept saying, "It's your ghost. You're the ghost boy." And it wasn't my ghost. I didn't own that spirit. It wasn't my spirit, but perception becomes reality. And I became this ghost boy who talks with ghosts, who has these conversations, and it became this really blown out of proportion where it's almost like it became my servant, my friend, my confidant, and we had these hours when it wasn't like that at all. It was just mostly it talking, me throwing things and running. It wasn't until the very end where I finally got the courage to summon the courage within myself, because I'd been viciously attacked by this thing, to actually speak to it face to face. And in that moment, it was amazing because I found out some things. And one of the things that the ghost told me was, I asked, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Danville, Danville." And that was on the notes, 35 years ago in the notebooks. And then my mom had retired from her job. I was doing some genealogy and Ancestry.com, and she discovered that there was a young man who had been killed by our college, and his name was Thomas Boyd. They always called this ghost Tommy, either because Tommy, can you hear me? Tommy knockers, whatever. We all called it Tommy for different reasons, but we called this thing Tommy. So it was odd to find this guy named Tommy had died not far from the college. His name was Thomas Boyd, and that was kind of intriguing. Then it turns out that he was found, his body was discovered by my mom's ancestors in 1779, and my ancestors, the Hubblies, found his body. And it turns out Thomas Boyd was from Danville, Pennsylvania. Yep. So we didn't learn that until almost 27 years after the haunting ended. So I always caution people, be careful of going into a location and assuming you know everything about everything after an hour of talking or conversation with the spirit. I was with that spirit for 72 straight days. I wasn't alone. We had the talking on cassettes. We had the voice. I had conversation. We had it was a constant presence in my life. And even at that time, I didn't quite understand how things are being done or shaped or said. I didn't understand. It's taken decades to begin to figure out, oh my gosh. I would run by the tree he was tied up into and killed in cross-country practice every day, right, by not knowing it. He had been found, his body, his corpse, by my relatives 7 generations before me. It turns out he had been a prisoner of war early on and had been marched to the streets of Montreal. I ran the same streets in the marathon 4 times. There are so many similarities, so many repetitive things, so many things that connected us in a way that was just fascinating. And so looking back now, I really think that it must have sensed some kind of familial historical connection. I really do. And whether or not that was added or assisted by my as Lorraine Warren called it, or Father Charlie called it, sensitivity, that might have added to that as well, and some of the common thought processes. So I just think that that's probably what happened, and I think he looked to me for help. And when he appeared to me in this mutilated form with his eyes gouged out and his stomach opened up and intestines falling out, I thought he was trying to scare me. I remember telling Jeff, he's evil. Look what he's doing. He's trying to frighten me on purpose. He's bad. And then it turns out the wounds that this ghost showed me in March were the identical wounds we read about 25 years later, 30 years later in books about his death, where he was tortured. And so like apparently what it was doing is showing me who he was, but I was a kid. I wasn't prepared for the moment. I didn't understand that his attempt to share an honest image of himself, an honest truth, I reacted in a horrible way, and I think my reactions to him were so severe sometimes that might have also led to his attacking me. The very fact I asked the priest to bust the room to get rid of him probably frustrated him. So, looking at it from my perspective, it was a bad thing. He was evil. He was aggressive. He was maybe demonic. But now looking back all the years with more information, I think that he was a pained soul, a tortured soul, a lost soul who was looking for some way to find peace, to have some way to have answers. And I remember he would stare at me from inside the closet, and I took showers, like, the big gang gym showers all the time with people, 50 guys in a room. I never cared about that. But when he looked at me, it's like he wanted to own me or possess me. And I remember he looked at my legs. Oh, my legs. And we found out, again, 28 years later, that he got caught. He ran too slow. But if he had my legs, because I was a track star, he wouldn't have gotten me. So it all began to make sense, and this puzzle pieces got filled in over 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And then after 30 years, the college invited us back, and we had a symposium, and brought back was Jeff, and brought back was Linda and Craig, and all these people were brought back, and they shared their memories from 30 years ago. It began to fill in some of the gaps that I didn't understand. It's been an amazing process of discovery. So looking, and if you have a pet, even a beloved pet, a dog or a cat, if they're injured, hit by a car or caught in a trap, they might snap at you. They might scratch you because they're afraid. And I really think the spirit, looking back, was tortured and afraid. And I think he got frustrated by my inability to speak to him, to deal with him, when he viewed in some way that I might be the answer for him. And so in the end, I did try to, talk him through a way to find peace, and of letting go and accepting that, he can be loved by somebody beyond himself. And in terms of the second part of Jordan's question, yes, there have been a few situations where I have seen things, but nothing to the degree, the extent, or the magnitude of what happened back at college when I was a teenager. Nothing. I suppose I could tell two quick stories. The first one is my grandfather died in 1998, September 8th. We buried him on the 11th, and I was a pallbearer. I wanted to be part of, his legacy. He was a great, great man. I loved him. And about 3 days later, on the 14th, I was in my bedroom and sleeping, and I looked up, and there he was in the doorframe of my room, wearing the same suit we buried him in. He was exactly the same, but a little more pale, and his nails were a little longer on his hands. And I said to him, you're dead, right? He goes, yep. So he said, yeah. He said, yep. So I just want to make sure. And I wasn't startled because I'd seen ghosts before, but it was my grandfather, so I was very, pay attention to what he was saying. It was a critical moment for me to make the most of this. And he said, I need you to do something for me. So he goes, find the gray box. I know what that meant. And so I didn't want to cause a scene, so I went and there was notes down on my desk, went back to sleep again. In the morning, I found the note about the box. So I called my mom, it was her dad, her father, who just passed away, and I asked about that. She had no clue. Called my uncle, and it turns out he had a gray box when he lived in New York State. They moved to Florida, they didn't know, and it turns out in that gray box in Florida they found was an insurance policy. So my grandma and my grandma said he was looking for something before he passed away. She said, go to sleep. You'll find it in the morning. He never woke up, so he's still looking for that. So that was a positive story. The other story I can tell you took place at the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York. I had won an overnight stay, the bed and breakfast. I donated some money to Barry Fitzgerald and GHI, who's doing a fundraiser. He's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro to raise funds for folks in Africa who were needy, who hadn't have any food or clothes. And I thought it was a great thing to do. So I donated. I ended up winning an overnight stay to this bed and breakfast called the Shanley Hotel. And it was haunted, though. And so I was going to take my wife, and if I was haunted, forget it. So I called Jeff up, and for the first time in 30 years, we got together like the old days, and we went to this place, and I told the owner, his name was Sal Nicosia, he passed away 2 years ago, I don't want to see any ghosts. I don't want to hear any ghosts. So he put me in the quiet room. I just sat there for like hours. I got really bored, so I just had to walk around by myself in the hotel, and I Found myself in this one room with these canopied beds, and there was a lady on the bench who was crying. I said, "Can I help you?" She looked up. She had no face. So I'm like, "The ghost." And she said to me, "That's not me in the picture. Take it down. She's offended. It makes her angry. It's the wrong person." So I said, "I'll be right back." And I ran down the stairs, and I found Sal. I said, "Listen, you have an unhappy customer. Here's what I mean." I explained to him it was a ghost. He said, "Well, what did she see?" And we went to the hotel, and I found the photograph, the actual picture on the wall. And he explained to me that it was just put up that day, and it didn't belong there, and it looked like the owner, but it wasn't the owner, so I took it right down. You know what? You can go back whenever you want to come back. It's on me. You're genuine. You make a big deal of it. You want to help the spirit out. You're always welcome here. That was a positive scenario. But I try to avoid those things because my experience with the first ghost was traumatizing. It was physically injurious. I lost a friend doing that. And so when your first romance in high school is a bad one, it makes you cautious about more romance. And for me, with the paranormal, my first experience was so traumatic and it's celebrated today, I've kind of swayed away from the active involvement in it.
And I understand that. I would feel the same way. And with that, we have so many questions. We are going to take our 5-minute break here at the top of the hour, and there's going to be a news broadcast. So maybe we'll find a little good news. Maybe. I mean, one can always hope, right? We'll be back on the flip side. This is a good time to fill up those coffee mugs, carafes, whatever you have with you. We'll be back.
Syria, sit down. I'm DiCesare, Fox News. A bipartisan meeting at the White House hours after the House voted overwhelmingly to condemn President Trump's decision to pull all U.S. forces out of Syria, where one Democrat said the president has created a crisis in the Middle East and in the world's confidence in America. Fox's Gernal Scott has more live.
Lisa, the president says America won't engage in an endless war in Syria. But at that meeting, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she asked about the path forward to fight ISIS. She described the president's reaction.
He just couldn't handle it, so he kind of engaged in a meltdown.
She and other Democrats left, something House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy criticized.
I've been in a lot of meetings where individuals get heated with one another. I do not believe in that process that you get up and you walk away.
He called the meeting after the speaker left productive. Pelosi says leaders don't have all the facts, and she's deeply concerned, Lisa.
Gernal, earlier today, President Trump said Turkey's move into Syria is between those two countries and not the U.S., as Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo are heading to Turkey to meet with that country's president.
The senior U.S. defense officials tell me that what we're witnessing right now is a deliberate, phased withdrawal of U.S. troops out of Syria. They will be repositioned elsewhere in the Middle East. The U.S. military is collapsing patrol bases in northern Syria and will pull back to one base in northeast Syria from which they will be airlifted out. It is an extremely dangerous evacuation that is underway, according to military commanders.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Early warning alerts for earthquakes in California will become available to the public starting tomorrow. That's according to the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Wall Street at the close. The Dow down 22, the NASDAQ off 24, the S&P lost 5 points. America is listening to Fox News.
If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. That's the problem growing businesses have because of a hodgepodge of business systems. One for accounting, another for sales, another for inventory. If that's you, you know it's a mess that takes up too much time and too many resources. And that hurts the bottom line. You need NetSuite by Oracle, the cloud-based business management software that gives you the visibility and control you need to grow. With NetSuite, you save time, money, and unneeded headaches by managing sales, finance and accounting, orders, and HR instantly from your desktop or phone. That's why NetSuite is the world's #1 cloud business system. Companies that use NetSuite grow 3 times faster than the S&P 500. And right now, NetSuite is offering you valuable insights with a free guide, 7 key strategies to grow your profits at netsuite.com/Fox. That's netsuite.com/Fox to download your free guide, 7 key strategies to grow your profits. netsuite.com/Fox.
Another State Department official spent several hours in front of lawmakers as they continue their impeachment inquiry of President Trump.
This witness brings with them more than 3 decades of diplomatic experience, with his last posting as a senior advisor to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Michael McKinley spent 37 years at the State Department in the Foreign Service. Previously, he served as an ambassador to Afghanistan, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. So he can compare and contrast the Trump administration's approach to foreign policy to that of other administrations, and whether the independent investigation by Rudy Giuliani into corruption allegations in Ukraine was out of bounds or other administrations did similar outreach.
Fox's Catherine Herridge in Washington. McKinley resigned his post Friday after he and other diplomats claimed they had been treated unfairly by the Trump administration. Americans spent less on shopping last month.
The Commerce Department says retail sales declined 0.3% in September. Economists were expecting an increase. There is speculation trade tensions and market swings are having an impact on spending. However, the month-long General Motors strike idled tens of thousands of workers, and that could be part of the reason some people are spending less. Excluding auto sales, retail sales dropped 0.1% in September. Though car dealers were selling more new cars, they were offering discounts, which resulted in overall lower receipts from sales. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
Nearly 1 million children could lose eligibility for free school lunch under a new proposal from the Trump administration that would cut the number of people who get food stamps. Children automatically qualify if their families get food stamps, but the administration has proposed tightening eligibility under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The National School Lunch Program serves about 30 million students. I'm Lee Silasera, and this is Fox News.
This news report is brought to you by NetSuite by Oracle, the cloud-based business management software that gives you the visibility and control you need to grow. NetSuite is offering their free guide, 7 key strategies to grow your profits, at netsuite.com/Fox.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host. I am so pleased to be able to have Chris DiCesare on here with me tonight. He is a great guy, a good friend, and somebody that everybody loves to hear from because of his experiences, as well as the fact that he's just pretty cool in his own right. So, Chris, I am so appreciative of you, and so are our listeners, and you have a lot of questions. Are you ready?
As long as it's not math, I'm bad at math.
No, I am dead horrible at math, so not going to happen. Let's see. So we did Jordan's. Sherry said, did other people in the hall have experiences too, or was it just your room? And she also said, did you find out who the spirit was? But you answered that. And she said, were there more than one?
Yeah, I tried my very best without much success to keep everything a secret. My first thought was I was going insane, that my mind had broken. I was seeing things that weren't real. I was hearing things that weren't there, and I wanted Jeff to write down what was happening, not for a book or a movie, but for a psychiatrist. And they could read through the notes and say, okay, here's what's going on with your mind. We believe it's this. Here's a medication for you. Here's what you take, and then you'll be fine. But over the next few days, we began to rule certain things out. There was no gassing in the room. There was no drugs in my food. I hadn't been hypnotized. And when people began to hear and see things, I was hearing things independently. Then we realized it was not something in my head, but something actually in the room, which actually seemed worse. Because it was just me. I just take a pill and everything's fine. But when you have something dead that you can't explain running around in your room or in the hallway near you and doing these things, it's how do you control that? How do you deal with that? So I tried very hard to keep things a secret from even my roommate. But my roommate, I'll never forget, one time he came running into the bathroom there and he goes, "You're not going to believe it. I just heard. You're not going to believe it. You won't believe it." And I asked him what he'd heard. He said, someone just called your name, Chris. And I was in the room by myself, and it was right by my ears, like 5 inches from my ears, and I kept hearing it, and no one was there. And that's what I had heard the night before that. So that matched my experience. And then eventually I recall I had fallen asleep, and he woke up, and he said to me, "Chris, there's someone in the room." And I asked him to describe the person. He said, "Looks like a guy with a tilted neck," just like I had seen days before that. So he began to see what I was seeing, and he had a tough time with it as well. He eventually left the college during the haunting because of what he was seeing and hearing. He claimed the ghost told him to leave Chris alone, not once but twice, and he wasn't going to wait around for a third time to hear that. And he mentioned to a researcher 9 years later that I would be sleeping and see this thing hovering over my head. And he recalls in great detail the time where I my pillow was actually floating. It had been pulled out from my head. It was floating in the air, and I was pulling against nothing with all my might to say, give back my pillow. It's my pillow. And that was enough. He said that no one's have to ever see that what I'm seeing right now. So I think that, he had enough of that, and I don't blame him. And he lived an hour away. He'd go home, and he did so. So that's how that worked out. Jeff, while he, to this day, claims he didn't actually see much of the ghost per se, he saw the effects on the room. He saw artifacts in the room move or sway. He saw the power go out and lights flashing. He saw the winds in the room where things would be pushed around with the winds in the room. He would see people's reactions to things. He would once in a while see like a glimmer of energy or like a movement in the room. He'd see the effects of things, and then other people like Linda Fox said she had been held down in the bed by the thing. Judy saw it near her room. Beth said it was calling my name right by her head, and she had to throw things at her and she fell unconscious. Brian said I had grabbed his leg. It wouldn't let go of his leg. We had to run after him. So, yeah, it wasn't as though it was myself only, and I wish it had been, because then I could have just kind of worked my own little way of getting through this. But it began to affect people all around me, and I became known as the Ghost Boy, and I don't like that. And the papers came. I had to have mailboxes and things like that. So it was a tough time, and eventually I became, I guess you'd say, part celebrity, part freak, where I was talked about in a way that, but talked about, not spent time with. And one of the hardest parts of the haunting for me to this day was my friends leaving, just stepping out of my life, where it's like, you going to hang out? Oh, not tonight? Oh, you'll call me. Okay, I'll just figure okay. Because I was defined by others. And for me, I wasn't the ghost boy, but if enough people believe something, it becomes a truth for society. Look at memes nowadays, or look at political advertising. A message gets out there, and it hooks onto something, and that becomes the reality for people. And it was hard as a teenager to be defined by people that I didn't hardly know, and in a way I didn't want to be defined. And so that was a tough thing. So it was quite a few of us. And my father went to the room, and he said there was something in the room that night, and he guarded me the whole night. He got involved.
That was astounding.
Father
that
Charlie
was
Manning.
Literally above and beyond, but
it is.
But it's totally him.
Yeah, well, Charlie Manning, the priest, said there was some kind of powerful energy. Whoa, we couldn't understand what it was. A powerful spirit in that room. So he had experience like that. So sometimes the haunting is a person in their basement seeing something. I read a book about that. But in this case, for well over a dozen people who experienced one way or the other. And then tragically, a gentleman who I knew from across the hall kept hearing the ghost call my name. And a mutual friend named Craig asked me if I could talk to him, if I could, give him some help. And I didn't know how to help him, and I didn't talk to him, and he ended up committing suicide. So, and I wish to this day I had spent at least 5 minutes with him just to talk a little bit. I just remember last time I saw him, he was walking down away from the college toward the Union Hall with a backpack, looking really depressed, like really despondent, and that's the last time I saw him. So all those things led me to eventually face that spirit and try to figure that out, and so for 20 years I tried to maintain things, contain things. I told people, don't talk about it. Don't say anything about it. I'm not involved in these things. I don't want to think about these things. And Jeff, too, he ended up burning his notes. It's only because a mutual friend made copies of it, surreptitiously. He just kind of stuck the copy one night. We have copies of the notes that exist today that used for the sci-fi show and for the Travel Channel show and books and movies like Please Talk With Me, So that's how it went, So it was just a rough time.
Well, I think that the fact that you came through that together, all of you came through that, and when you were outed, they all still rallied around with you. Can you describe, because there are a couple of people in chat who are not familiar with your experience all the way through. Can you describe how you were literally outed? Well, yeah, it's okay. The concept of outed nowadays known with the idea of like a LGBTQ kind of thing, where you have to release your feelings to people around you for being judged for not being what is quote unquote normal or expected. So, but in my case, the outing was something about spirituality, where I had to actually admit, yes, this thing was in the room, that yes, it was real, that yes, it would talk to me, that yes, I was the ghost, but all these things. And I had a real hard time with that. And luckily during the haunting, there were a few people that, because they felt bad for me, because they cared about me, just maybe they were curious, were very kind to me and helped me a lot, and people like Jess and Beth and Linda, they were there with me, and they sat with me during these
terrible moments when things are flying out of the ceiling and, horrible things were occurring. And and I owe them everything, because without them, I'm going to have to hear myself. I recall on a number of occasions, I never wanted to kill myself. I never wanted to die. But there are times I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how. And I just want to share with the listeners one moment where, after I'd been attacked in the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror above the sink, and I saw these 3 roughly parallel scratches on my back from my shoulder blades down to my waist, basically. And I looked in the mirror above the sink, and I thought, that guy's going to die, like in the movies. And I thought, wait, that's me. Why is that me? Why is this happening to me? I remember screaming, who are you? Show yourself, you coward. And all I could hear in the room was the dripping of the shower head. Bloop, bloop. I just got out of the shower. And I remember, because of either the pain or the fear or the trauma, falling on my knees and then down into my face, flat into my face forward on the floor, lying there on this dirty, wet college boys' bathroom floor. That's probably the most dirtiest place on the planet. But I was so in pain and shock, I didn't know what to do. And I just remember seeing one thing. On my left wrist, facing the door, I saw one droplet of water, a pear-shaped droplet of water. And in that water droplet, I could see the room inverted. I thought, refraction. Water refracts light. That's science. I like science. Then it fell off my wrist. I thought, well, that's gravity. Gravity is constantly pulling down at things, 9.8 feet per second. And so gravity pulled it down. That's science. And I looked down on the bathroom floor, and the grout between the tile was darker than the moisture of the water drop. That's science. So I knew I wasn't going mad, that science still worked. But I couldn't place in my mind what this ghost thing was. And how can I deal with it when it can go through walls and I can't, when it knows things I don't? When I can't do these things, and eventually they'll win. It'll beat me. I'll get tired, and I can't keep putting my brain back together again. I'm going to lose. I'm going to die, and I don't want that to happen. And I recall just telling myself, don't make a face. Make a calm face. When they find me, my mom will put me in a casket without a bad face. She quit college to have me. I was such a burden to her. She loved me, read me stories. She just taught me how to read and how to count. My mom was such a good person to me. I didn't want her to have to bury her child with a horrible face on his, expression. So I just made a calm face so she wouldn't be alarmed and feel I passed in a calm or peaceful way. I thought about my mom mostly, about her reaction if I was going to die from this thing. And then Jeff opened the door, and I don't know who it was at first, and I heard sneakers squeaking on the floor, and then I was lifted up, a towel put around me, and I went into his room, and there was Ed, and then people realized, this is terrible. And I was bleeding in my back and shaking, and that's when things got really crazy. So that led to people talking about me. The picture of the ghost that we taken on Valentine's Day led people to talk about me. The photograph of me with my arms out, with the wind going around and my sleeves blowing back, and the cardboard, people talking about me. I couldn't not be outed because it was so fascinating to people. And in terms of recent days, because I hid away for so many years, it wasn't until 2009 where I got a phone call from Mara Katria, who's an award-winning director. She directed the film Please Talk With Me, and she's such a talented person. We're about to release an album now. She worked with Modern English, and just a great human being. But she said she wanted to make a film that dealt more with the people involved in their trauma than the ghost itself, and I could buy into that about people. And my trauma was ghosts. Other people's trauma could be cancer or alcoholism or poverty. And so she allowed me to, and Bill Edwards, the producer, allowed me to share my story in a positive way. And that got me out there speaking at colleges like Penn State University and Geneseo. And then Sci-Fi came knocking, and then I got in Sci-Fi and now Travel Channel. So it's been a process where I trusted people. I never wanted to write a book. I never wanted to be on TV. I never wanted anything like that. But people around me trusted me and believed in me, and I trusted them, and it's worked out very well.
Didn't a man try to find you based on the legend of the Ghost Boy?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's happened a couple times because in the area between Syracuse and Buffalo, from Rochester down to northern Pennsylvania, it was in the papers back then. It became this urban legend. So people looked for many, many years. There was a gentleman named Tim Shaw who had a radio show. His spiritualist minister, he searched for many years. And when he found out I was going to speak for the very first time in 2011, in conjunction with the film Please Talk With Me, he had just had an operation, cancer operation, and he actually had to be driven because he was still in the hospital. He ran to the hospital without permission and had his friend drive him to see me speak. And he said afterwards, don't stop speaking. Don't stop. Keep sharing this. We've been looking for you for 20 years. I've been looking for you. And to know that you're real, that you really exist is amazing, And so he wrote the first book about the C21 haunting he wrote, and back in 2012, I was honored to have him do that. Then there have been folks, I was in Pennsylvania at the Steamtown Mall, was walking through there, and some big guy said, oh my God, you're the Ghost Boy, you're my hero. And he explained to me how heard about me in the paper, and he wanted to be me. He wanted to talk with ghosts and be real cool. He'd wrestle, and he'd say, "I am the Ghost Boy," with his fizzing headlock move. And I explained to him that it wasn't actually fun and that he didn't want to be me, but I realized that he cared about me. And so here I am in my college dorm room with these mists and these voices and this cold air and these frightening sounds and screeches. Outside the window, people are falling in love and tossing frisbees and having picnic lunches, and I'm trapped alone. There was some kid 100 miles away, 500 miles away, thinking of me, cheering for me. And it goes to show you that you're never truly alone. There's always somebody, if you allow it to happen, who reaches out to you and will help you. And you just take that hand, because one day you'll help somebody else out because you're still here to help. That's right. So there's a reporter for the Democrat and Chronicle who was trying to find me. He heard the rumors, and he came down to see me talk with me, and he was outside the building yelling, "Does anyone know the Ghost Boy? I'm just looking for him. I want to talk to him. I have no harm intent. Just want to ask him questions. I really like to meet him. I'm told he's in this building." And I couldn't do it. I walked close to him, and I got scared, and I turned him around and literally hid behind the mailboxes, bay outdoor mailboxes, and he left. And in 2013, after the sci-fi show was on, his daughter reached out and said, "My dad was looking for you. He never found you." I said, "Well, no, he did." I described his jacket to her and his hat. "That's him." I said, "I know, I saw him. He saw me, but I was too scared to tell him." So I said, "If you want to say a prayer, if he passed by, you want to say a prayer to him, let him know he did find me. He was right. I was there. Just, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it. I was overwhelmed by pressure. People on one hand saying I was a sinner, I had sinned, God to punishing me, to I'm the next coming of Christ and what my miracle is going to be, to, the response was so
weird,
abnormal. But there was nothing like today. Today you have TV shows, you have websites, you have paranormal teams, you have discussion boards, you have conventions. Back then you had The Exorcist, The Warrens, and Amityville Horror. So there was nothing to people to put their anchor down with for understanding. And I found myself in a swirl of this unwanted attention that I didn't understand myself. And if you go out in the public, in the press, and you don't know what you're talking about, your opinion is a fool. I don't want to be a fool. Plus, I was 19. If I had gotten caught up in that and done the TV shows back then and said I'm the Ghost Boy, I'd be posing on like Playgirl magazine being a fool. I'd be like on TV Guide. I'd be like selling myself at drug parties. I wasn't that kind of person. I couldn't do any of that. So I just hid away, and I had a nice life. I got married, had a family. I mowed my lawn. And then when the time was right, when I felt I could trust somebody, which are Bill and Mara, I shared my story in a very hopefully positive, meaningful way about surviving, And I don't think for any of us, the events that define us, they define us because they make us uncomfortable. They force us to be ourselves, not in your high school, you're a jock or a stoner or a geek or a nerd or a brain, but not in real life. And when you can't plan your life, you can't plan every moment, the real you comes out. Maybe you're not as brave as you thought you were. Maybe you're not as smart as you thought you were. Maybe you're not as forgiving, but you know who you are. And you leave that, hopefully, with an understanding of what you can and can't do, and at best apply your skills and compensate for things you can't do. So I discovered I'm not a brave person. I ran and I ran and I ran. I used to run for times to win races. I ended up running from something I feared. That's okay. You can be scared, but at the same time I realized I was a kind person. I always tried to help people and forgive people and the ghosts. And it's okay to be yourself once in a while, not be labeled blue or red or male or female or young or old or, so.
Well, I'm going to just do a station ID, and we will be right back. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. There we go. Now, Chris, one of the things that I have always been so impressed by is the fact that things happen the way they're supposed to. And that certainly was the case with you, because you, 30 years, because Charlie was at the symposium, wasn't he? Charlie Manning was there. You had found him before that. Yes, that was one of the very first time. Yeah, it was a beautiful thing because he had some health problems. We couldn't find him for the sci-fi show. They couldn't actually find him for the police documentary film. We couldn't find where he was. We were expecting the worst. And then I went and showed the Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and he had to be in the recovery room from hospital, and they had the radio on, and that show was on, and I said on the air, and I said, I want to thank Father Charlie Manning for helping. That's me. And so he heard that, and he ended up messaging me on Facebook, and then when I saw it was him, I couldn't believe it. I was so happy. Within a week or two, I drove up to him to see him up in Rochester because I wanted to thank him again for what he did. Well, he was pretty amazing. And
yes.
through the course of your experience, I do want to ask these couple of questions.
Sure.
Let's see. Did you ever have strange dreams because you actually saw that spirit? And has Tommy ever come back to see you since?
I don't know if I don't have strange dreams. Every morning I wake up, I said to my wife, I had the spare dream. I know, save it, because the first thing I do is run out of bed. Guess what strange dreams are? Most of the dreams remain scary. Most of the dreams seem to have an element of prediction to them, but you can't be responsible for everything. I remember in 1986, the following year for the haunting, it was my final year of college, and Jeff and I were in our room. We roomed together the following year before we graduated. And I had this dream that I was wearing this silver suit. I jumped up in the sky, and people were clapping for me. And then all of a sudden, I caught on fire, and I landed in the pool in my backyard. So I told Jeff my dream. That's strange. He wrote it down in his journal. We went down the steps to the lobby, and there was a Challenger. It went up, up, boom, and then down. I'm like, oh, Jeff, that's what I was seeing. So what do you do? I mean, can I call NASA? It's going to blow up. Do I tell them that? Will they think I'm a suspect? Again, it's how do you deal with knowledge that you shouldn't have? Who do you trust to share it? Is it supposed to happen? If you're dreaming of something before it happens, is that God's will? Is that what the universe intends? Dare you change it? Can you change it? If you change it, people don't always understand. It just sounds odd about it, but until you're in those moments, you don't think of the questions that would come up. So when you talk to a survivor of a foreign war, or they fight in combat, the things they can tell you, you think, I never thought about that, because you're not in that situation to know. And so one of the benefits of going through the situations is it allows me oftentimes to put myself in other people's shoes more easily, quickly, because I want to understand where they're coming from. So as a special ed teacher, special needs children, I'm better able, I think, because of my experience, to listen with a clearer ear, to judge more slowly, and to try to help a little better, And Lorraine Warren basically said to me that I was sensitive. The priest, Father Charlie Manning, said it might happen again to you. My mom, when I was a kid, said I could predict some things, but didn't make me feel odd about it. So obviously I inherited something from somewhere. It wasn't written in a book when I was 3, so where I had some kind of ability, and that's fine. But you know what's interesting? Everybody who's tall, they say, play basketball. If you're just cute, have a model. But you know what? Sometimes your desires and personality doesn't fit or match what people say you should do. So also, a lot of people told me I should be a priest, I should be a public speaker, I should do all these things, but I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so I think that's part of the reason I don't like being defined as the ghost boy, because I think I knew I could be if I had to be. I think down the road I could have colored those things, like Jonathan Edwards things or Teresa Caputo, Lion Medium. And that's nice. I do that. That's not me. I'm a more quiet person. I like to do things out of the spotlight. I like to show charity that's not spoken about, because just for me, I think it's more about character and less about public relations. But, I don't want to judge anybody. It's just that's for me.
That's kind of me too.
Yeah.
So, let's see. This actually is something that I had wondered about, but I've never asked you. I've known you for like 3 years now. I've never asked you this. But are your children interested in the paranormal at all because of your experiences, or are they gifted as well?
I have to tell you that having children changed my life. You stop living for you and you begin to live for others. That's a forced requirement being a parent. It's not always easy and it's not always fun, but it's a beautiful process once it unfolds in a positive way. I didn't know what to do. My wife did not like talking about this stuff. It made her uncomfortable. And so I tried not to, but at the same time I thought, well, listen, it happened to me. It could happen to them. So I had to choose what to do. And so I didn't want to make them think it will happen to them by saying, get ready for ghosts. They're real. They're all around you. Or I don't want to blind them and say, don't worry, it's all fake. I'm just telling a fairy tale. I didn't want to do either one because I wanted them to make their own choices. So what I did was I told fairy tales, bedtime stories about rabbits, about princesses, about kings, about pharaohs, about mummies, about all creatures. And all those stories I told were actually my experiences in college. And I taught my kids how to react when something happens. So if this happens, do this. If that happens. So I basically gave them lessons that I learned from my haunting in the form of children's stories. This way, in case something happened to them spiritually, they, you know what, that story my dad told me, I'll do this. But it wouldn't make them believe it has to happen that way. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I predispose them towards these things against their will or judgment. So it wasn't until the sci-fi show came out where my kids said, "Oh my gosh, the stories you told us that yes." I said, I didn't want to scare you and make you fearful of these things, but I wanted to prepare you in case it happened to you like it happened to me. And so I did that. And my kids were just stunned that the things I had told them as fairy tales when they're growing up safely were real events that had occurred. And I'll tell you, my son, when he was small, I was his hero. He dressed like me, talked like me. Being a teenager, he started wearing the metal and stuff and the black leather and the "what's up, dude?" And I became like the old man. I wasn't cool anymore. Once he saw me on TV, I was cool again. That rocked. That was good then. I told you, man. I told you I'm cool. So that helped me.
A good benefit from the television show.
Yeah, unexpected.
Well, that is really cool. And they're both neat people. So,
I love my kids. I'm so proud. I really am.
Well, obviously you didn't destroy them or damage them with the bunnies dealing with the situation. So that's a good thing.
Right.
Now, Sherry said when you were describing your experience, Sherry in chat said, "Oh wow, that's terrifying, and for all this to happen before ghost hunting was even a thing way back, so you didn't have any resources, kind of a thing." So
right, and that's what though it's challenging. That was so challenging because we had to find our own way, Jeff and I. But let me share this with you as a thought. There were no scripts. There were no methods that were described by Grant Wilson or Jason Hawes or Zach Baggins. We weren't influenced in a false way. We walked our own path at our own pace to discover what was happening. And I think that's invaluable. For as much as TV does with the TV ghost stories and things to share vocabulary or locations or a feel for these things, how to properly investigate or assess ghost hunt, I think it's damaging because they make you think that it happens every day to every person at every location, and I don't think that's fair. The other thing I could tell you is that my experience, and I could be wrong, but my experience is these spirits have personality. These spirits have purpose. They have feelings. They're an extension of the physical self. And there's nothing worse to me than having 18 people walk into a house, yell, talk on this box, curse, knock on the walls, perform for me, and then leave and show their friends on Facebook. I think that just aggravates me to the greatest extent. I don't mind doing ghost investigations if it's to benefit the building. So the building's crumbling, it's a historical artifact, and I want to save it. I'll explain to the spirits, listen, people are coming in, you won't like them here, but they're going to save this house. They're paying money to save this house, so they're guests for you. Treat them properly. Speak to them, things like that. And so if it's a fundraiser to preserve the building, if it's a fundraiser for a non-animal shelter, for a girl with a heart transplant, I will do those things. I will agree to do that because it's the right thing to do. But I don't engage myself in the for-profit things because people want to go there, have a fun time, have a few beers, pee on the grave, and then go home. I don't want to do that. And again, I can criticize for that. Maybe my way is archaic. Maybe my way is close-minded. But that's, from my experience, how I believe things should be done, which is in a polite, decent fashion, as though they were people as well.
Well, because they were people.
Well, not everyone believes that, but I do. My experience lets me to believe that.
I believe that too. And I know that I used to go with groups to do investigations. And it was a lot of fun. I met people. I enjoyed those times. But I had an extreme experience in a location. And it kind of changed my outlook on investigations.
Right.
And I did not necessarily enjoy the experience. It was kind of frightening. And I just decided that, I think I am going to just do my thing. And residential cases matter to me. If somebody's afraid in their home, then I think you should be able to intervene and help, right?
I think a good person tries to help when they can, yes.
Yeah, but I agree with you that I don't want to go with groups that it's all about drinking and, let's see what we can find. Let's see, what devices we can find that are going to wig the spirits out and make them react. Right. That's just wrong. And I learned that the hard way, but I'm a quick study. It wouldn't take another time.
Well, that's a good thing too. I think we're all walking this path we call life, trying to do our best to not just survive, but to actually make it meaningful. And one of the best things you can do to make it meaningful is to actually be part of something. Mm-hmm. Part of a group or society or a family where you can share your ideas and do positive things. Anything from working in a soup kitchen, right, to encourage people to vote, to helping people with their health care, to babysitting for somebody, to helping with there are so many things you can do if you choose to be a positive part of society. You don't have to be, but I think it's good because we spend all the time behind our computer screens, liking things that we like, blocking things you don't like, that we sometimes isolate ourselves from what the reality of the world is. And if we stop talking to each other, we have disagreements, it's harder to have relationships or at work or in your family or anything like that. But I like the idea of the paranormal with spirituality because it affects us all. You can't deny that whether you're left or right in the political spectrum, there's something out there and we feel it and we see it sometimes. And I hope that that'll be a unifying force down the road for us.
I think so too. I hope so. It's really, you have to have interaction.
Right.
The human psyche demands that. But we don't have to go to the point of Lord of the Flies to do that.
That's right. Sucks your asthma, Piggy. That's right. I want the conch. Yeah, I remember that book. I read books the whole time. I read that, in fact, the semester before the ghost thing happened.
That was probably an exciting thing to have read right before that experience.
Right. This is gruesome.
Yeah. Something that I found interesting, and you didn't go fully into the Lorraine experience and reaction to you, but when you talked to Judy, you said that Lorraine recognized your spirit, your aura.
Right. Yep.
And I think that is one of the things that people react to, and I think that's probably why Tommy initially tried to communicate with you. Because, well, you had the familial connection, right, where your ancestor found him. But B, the fact that even today, you can walk into a room and see you, and you're just different from a lot of people. And I get told that I'm a lighthouse a lot of times. I don't know that that's true. But when you're having a positive moment, and you're like me, you try to have a lot of positive moments.
Yes.
I love going to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I feel like I'm helping and I'm accomplishing, and I'm going to get to see people I like and respect and meet new ones and, things of that nature. And it shows.
They become family.
Yes. And I think that's what you brought to the table that Tommy reacted to much in the same way that Lorraine did. Because I think spirits recognize a beacon when they see one too.
That thought always would be uncomfortable. It's kind of like the kid in school who has the pool in his backyard. In the summertime, he has 1,000 friends. Hey, how you doing? The wintertime, they kind of go away. It's like, where'd my friends go? On summer, they come back again. So you always, I think that once you achieve some kind of recognition, whether it's at your workplace, whether it's in your social structure, whether it's in a sport, or even in the paranormal like I am, people sometimes want to appropriate or apply your skill, what they perceive as your skill. And so I've also learned to watch for that too, where, who is actually asking me questions because they care about me or care about others, and who actually wants to get a leg up on things, wants me to advertise their product for them to make some money at the expense. So you have to learn that kind of too. So when people tell me that my aura is bright or strong, whatever it is, I get kind of conscientious about that because I don't want people to think that I use that to control people. At the same time, I don't want to be treated as special because of that. So it's an odd kind of thing that it's born of my experience. When I was in college, during the haunting, I gave a speech in my communications class, and it went very well. And this gentleman named Dean said, "Oh my gosh, that was an incredible speech. It was incredible." I'm like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "I know why." So why? "Your aura is so huge. It's a giant." I'm like, "What?" So I felt annoyed that I worked on that speech for a long time. I researched that speech. I wrote that speech. So it's going to be my aura? That's not fair. You know what I mean? So, but if they have the same aura, so it's just strange how sometimes your personal experiences can affect you. And I was so confused, Kat, by the world around me. I listened to every word said to me. I thought about every possibility, what was going on and how it happened. So when this fellow named Dean said, "It's your aura," I went back and told Jeff, I said, "Jeff, do they have an aura?" Then he mentioned about Lorraine Warren a little bit and her reaction to me. And then we tried to do these little workshop things with this clear wine, with this black background. So, I mean, we always tried to follow what could that possibly be? We're intrigued by things, you know?
Yeah. Do you really think that, I don't know how to phrase this, when Lorraine withdrew from you, and I know you did carry that for a very long time.
Oh, decades.
Because you felt that you had done something wrong, or that she just didn't care for you. But when that happened and you internalized that so strongly, do you think that perhaps that led to vulnerability? That if a world-famous psychic demonologist didn't want to touch you, then, you know, maybe there was something weird going on?
Well, to be truthful, I didn't know who she was. Jeff had mentioned to me that they were famous, the Amityville Horror and things like that. I didn't really know who she was. I didn't follow those things, but it was a full house. The theater was packed that night, so I knew she must have been famous. And then they started to show their slides of all over the world, of Great Britain, of France, and I realized, my gosh, they're big-time performers. And I thought them as the performers, like The Walking Dead isn't real, Star Trek isn't real, but it's a good show. You know, so when I walked up there to shake her hand, I just wanted to say hello and be polite. Jeff, by the way, had questions written down to ask her. He was very serious about that. And when I was basically thrown off the stage, I wasn't so much angry at her or him for doing it. I didn't know why it happened. I was embarrassed.
Right.
You know, your reputation is important. My dad raised me to have a good reputation, so I'm being thrown off a stage by famous people in front of 250 people that might know me. What do you do? I mean, I was embarrassed by what happened as a reaction to her reaction to me. And that emotionally hurt me. And then people said for years, go talk to her, go talk to her. I was afraid if I did so, now that she's 70, 80 years old, she might have the same reaction and have a heart attack or, you know, withdraw, and I don't want to give her any pain. So those were the facts as I knew them, you know, and so that made me hurt. And I didn't want to go on the ghost hunt with them. I didn't. I stayed back, and it took her daughter to tell me, oh, no, listen, as scared as you were, she was more scared. She was afraid that, you know, people are paying to see her, that, you know, she couldn't perform and read them and tell them things about their lives, and they'll make her look like a fool. So I was thinking about my individual needs. She was thinking about the entire 50 people there wanting to hear what she had to say. And so I get it now. But, you know, when you're young, sometimes your perspective rules the day. And when you're young, you're invincible, you know everything. And I didn't.
Well, we're going to take our final break, and we will be right back. Everyone, just hang in there. We will be back in a flash.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Port in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantium. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Port in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to our final segment here on Paranormal Experience Radio with Christopher DiCesare. Chris, I am so appreciative of you being here. This has been fun. And I like that we have all these questions because these are real ghost hunters in these chat rooms.
Right.
And I think that means a lot. And I usually try to say paranormal investigators because I wouldn't want to be hunted, so I should rephrase that. But
fair enough.
I just know that, nope, don't come hunt me. So if you had to do things over, would you have stayed when you first started having the experiences?
Well, I wish that would never happened. If I could snap my fingers and make it never have happened, I would have, even though it's defined me in a positive way lately. I would have rather enjoyed my college years and just had the normal experience, I think. But you can't go back and change things. If I had to go back and change my actions, I probably would have tried to be more secure in who I was, about my own self-worth, and let Jeff take more pictures and let people know more information rather than to hide things and burn things out of fear. But the truth is, that's who I was, and that's honestly what I did. And it's not like the movies, it's true, but it's real. And I think people read through those notes, they're just raw. My name is spelled wrong, and I'm saying things like, maybe the candy's haunted. I just saying these things, but it shows you people in crisis. And I think that over the years, people have, to my great gratitude, use this experience of this haunting with the book that I wrote and things like that to apply to their own lives in the sense that we all have our burden, and that could be depression, that could be cancer, that could be loss of a job, anything. My burden was that ghost, and I tried to solve for X to survive that. Because the ghost is less common than, say, gambling debt, people pay more attention to it, but it's no different than anyone else's struggle in that regard. They're trying to overcome the struggle. So what I've learned is that life is going to happen against your plans. Every couple of days, a police officer knocks on some mom's door and says, "Can you have a seat, please? Where's my baby? Where's my son?" I have to have a seat, and it's all the news that they've been killed in a car accident. That's how things happen. And I think it's important that as we get older and we're more mature as adults, we realize that, and we don't take things for granted. So now that it did happen, I don't question what I did anymore and try to fix things. I accept who I am, what I did, and try to find the positive in those things. Unfortunately for me, people around me have been very kind for me to do that. And from going to lying on that bathroom floor bleeding from my back, thinking I was going to die, to speaking in front of people on a stage, who traveled 10 hours to hear me talk, what a blessing that is. It's a blessing to have a value. It's a blessing to be heard. It's a blessing to make friends. So I really wouldn't change much, Kat, because even if I wanted to, and I would want to, it might not be as good as it is now. And hey, maybe all my fighting against this is meant to happen. We talk about free will versus destiny. I said to the ghost, "This is the wrong person. I can't do this. I can't help you." And guess what? In the end, I think I did.
I think you did too. And that being said, you have something coming on television at some point in like 2 weeks. Tell people
right,
about
that's something.
that.
Sure.
Travel, right?
This past February and March, I filmed in Manhattan for the Travel Channel. The show is called My Horror Story, The episode is called Run, Ghost Boy, Run. So here you go. It premieres on the Travel Channel on Monday, October 28th at 10 p.m. And they'll rerun it again next few days over and over again, but that's when it premieres. I can tell you that they treated me very well. When I did the sci-fi show 7 years ago, which was a nice achievement, I didn't know what was happening at all. I felt like I was swirling around like a spinning top. Now that I know more about the business and how things are done, I can tell you that these folks who made the show were really kind, they were professional. They treated me with respect, and I really do appreciate that. You know, it's a big TV show, and I thank them for that. And I'm hoping people enjoy that. You know, I'm older now, I'm fatter now, I'm grayer now, but hopefully, in spite of the vessel, the story, the message still comes out strong in that.
I am absolutely positive that it will, and I love the title. That's a great episode name.
I think I'm before the Holzer Files. I think I'm after Ghost Adventures.
Okay. Well, because I have to set my DVR because, you know, I'm traveling at 4:30 the next morning. So.
Wow. Oh, you know what? And if I can share one thing to you, Kat, and then this is just for me. I was invited back to the college, Geneseo, to speak in the dormitory where everything happened. They're having pizza for the kids and things for a couple hours. October 25th at Geneseo. This is my first time. I spoke at the auditorium in the Union Hall. I spoke in the auditorium for the very first time I'm speaking in the building where it happened. I'm going to be able to give a walking tour of where all the things happened, what rooms they were in. So on a personal note, I'm happy about that, to go back to where it all happened in a very positive way. And sometimes, like I remember a friend had a breakup with his girlfriend in a diner. It was a bad memory. He got engaged to somebody else and brought to the same diner and covered the memory up, the bad with the good. So it's touched me to go back and share the story with the kids in a very positive way and have a positive reaction to that place.
Well, how do you feel about the possibility of Tommy showing up?
So I want to thank you for the picture you gave me a couple of years ago of the seagull by the beach. That's wonderful.
Way to go.
How about the Nationals?
Well, I tell you what, I like them doing the baby shark.
I do too. It's adorable, yes.
And they pack one up in their dugout, too. I thought that was adorbs.
How's that for diversion?
I will roll with that. Because I know that's in your mind.
Right. It really is.
But you know what? You know, the way that you dealt with him, I think that you gave him closure and peace.
I hope so. I tried my best.
So I don't think that you're going to have to worry about that. But just if he should show up, you can just say, why, hello.
I could probably do that. I can tell him, I have his friend in Cat, and he's way down south someplace. I'm just kidding now. So listen, if he's still there, I'll feel a little bit sad because I was hoping he'd find rest. But if he's still there, and I do sense that, I feel an obligation to at least say hello and try to let him know that I think he's fine. I went back to the college a couple of times to speak, not at that dorm, and no one has heard anything lately or seen anything in the past 20, 30 years. It's just like a hot spot to talk about now. So I feel really confident. When I did talk to him and told him to find rest, I didn't tell anybody I was doing that. And then the next few days, people kept saying, what happened? There's no ghost anymore. And then after a few days, I told them what I had done. So I feel fairly confident that he found peace, which I think he deserves. But if not, we'll deal with it as it goes, you know. And I hope that someday, when I put my head down the last time, and I find my answer after my life is done, I might see him, and I might say thank you to him, and maybe we can look out the window or look down the cloud or look wherever we're going to be and just look at the sun or the moon and know that things worked out okay for both of us.
That would be my hope too, because you're an awfully good guy. And I know that you had the best of intentions on helping him to find peace. And I hope he found it too.
Right.
Now, tell me about this new book.
Oh, right. There's so much going on. I know. The new book is a case study. So the book I wrote a number of years ago is like a memoir. This is called C2D1, an examination of the haunting and how the Ghost Boy came to be. And so it's a collection of writings. It's just actual drill notes entirety in there, all the notes with the footnotes on there. Dale Kaczmarek, who examined the negatives and the photographs back 30 years ago, wrote his piece about the photograph of the ghost. Mark Atria, who did a film about that, Police Talk With Me, won the awards, who wrote a chapter. Mark Allen Keyes, who's a retired police detective, state trooper from Pennsylvania. interrogated us as though we were witnesses in the stand to find holes in our story. Alan Lewis was the first person to investigate the haunting, who found Father Charlie Manning, who found Paul, my roommate, 9 years later, wrote his chapter about that. The priest himself, Charlie Manning, was interviewed for the book about what he saw and did in preparation for the blessing. And then John Jeff Unger wrote a chapter about the process of getting evidence and things. So, along with my own eyewitness testimony. So it's just a case study, 300 pages of the haunting. You know, who was in it, what the dates were, and people can look at that almost like as a journal and say, what do I get from this? What can I glean from the photographs, from the journal notes, from the reactions? So I'm very proud that these people who I love took the time to share their ideas with me to create a multidimensional, multi-viewpoint case study of the haunting that took place back in 1985. I'm very blessed.
Do you know, I don't believe I am familiar with any other case study of that nature of any public haunting.
There was a book published in, I think, 1977 called The Amityville Horror.
Yes.
That was published way back in the day. And I'm trying to think, that was by J. Anson.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only one I know of, except for a few Warren books. And Lorraine Warren had a few books like The Dark Place. Other than that, there really aren't any large case studies with evidence and eyewitness accounts and things like that over time like this. So I really do think it's a very unique thing. And I'm hoping that this lasts and people can read this 10 years from now, 50 years, 100 years from now, because it gives people a look into an extreme haunting from the safety of their bedroom or their Barker lounger or their porch, you know, and hopefully somebody's helped by that. It also helps me to describe what happened, because there are these lores and legends about me that aren't necessarily true. You know, like we can say that the home run hitter, the guy hit a home run a mile, but it was really 500 feet. So people exaggerate sometimes. So I want to put the record straight of what the actual facts of the case were. You know, so people can know the truth from the legend.
Well, I think that's imperative, because really and truly, you are a legend. You are an urban legend for a very long time.
It's so strange, but I will tell people I didn't want that to happen. Because it happened, I had to deal with it. I suppose it's nice in a way, but there is some pressure being an urban legend, because you can never quite live up to what they expect, but hopefully the real me is okay.
I think the real you's pretty terrific. Just saying.
Thanks.
So I am going to kind of wrap this up. People can find you where?
I'm on Facebook, Christopher DiCesare. It's Christopher, and my name is DiCesare, or I have a website, and the website is very simply Real Ghost Boy, one word, realghostboy.com, and that has the haunting on there, the books, the DVDs, the multimedia has the shows, the sci-fi show, event schedule, all that's on there now. So it's realghostboy.com or Facebook.
Either one. You'll find them. Yes. And thanks again. I know that this is a large chunk out of your evening, and I know that you've got stuff going on, so I appreciate even more so.
I had a great time. I always do talking to you, Kat. I want to thank your listeners for being here with us.
Well, I have a great time with you, too. I'm glad we're friends. I value that. So,
happy ending.
And just so everyone knows, we've got an interesting week coming up. We're going to have a few nights of replays, because Denise Pridemore is going to be traveling this Monday. So Paranormal Pride will be a rebroadcast. I'm going to be traveling the next 2 Mondays. So those 2 shows for her will also be rebroadcast. And I just appreciate every one of y'all. You know, y'all are the reason we do these shows. You make it just fantastic. We love getting people to come and talk to you like Chris, who have so much to share. And thank you for letting us do that. I will talk to y'all. Same cat time, same cat channel. Y'all take care.